AJEFN.
Yo, what up? This is Manny Digital. Welcome to the Fatherhoods podcast.
What's up, gentlemen?
I had a magnificent weekend, in case you guys give a shit.
You were out, right, with the family?
Yeah, we went up to Vermont. So my family, a few cousins of mine from Miami came up, and one cousin, her husband, and their kids, and they usually try to get away in the winter for their kids' winter break. No, I guess it's spring break for them. And they came up to Vermont, and we just said, "Fuck it, let's go." And we did really not much. We kind of just hung around, cabin fever style. But the kids were out in the snow, and it was a lot of fun, man. We had a good little quiet time. How about you guys? Not as exciting?
That's a great segue for me. So I had before I get into anything, Heather, how was your weekend?
It's fine. Low key. Okay. Lots of basketball and karate and all that good stuff.
All right.
Yeah.
So me and my girl, we had a great weekend as well. Probably too good of a weekend, and without getting into specifics, I did want to ask you guys: you ever feel like you have too good of a time where you feel you might have neglected your kids? Not that we did neglect our kid, but you just feel guilty that you kind of just weren't the parent that you should have been when you kind of go into like a fun mode yourself as an adult. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. I think that is normal. I think it's just part of the learning process of it all. Because, we have to still be ourselves to a certain extent, even though we're parents and feel like ourselves and try to do what we did. But I think part of it is just trying to figure out like how you find the middle ground of like, all right, this is what I can do now that I'm a parent. This is what I can't do now that I'm a parent. Right. If that makes sense, you know what I mean. And sometimes we have to kind of learn by trial and error with like, oh, okay, this is not going to work. Like whatever I just did is probably not the way to go the next time. But
right. You just don't want the error to be something tragic.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, yeah.
So that's where the guilt comes in,
Yeah.
I mean, but to Kay's point, like especially in your case, well, I guess in both of your cases, but Kay, your kid's a little older. Having your first kid, it has to be, how you start figuring shit out and
like a learning
how far you. Yeah, for better or worse, that's the reality. So you got to start to figure out, all right, if you're used to like, I don't know, going out to clubs every weekend or what have you, if you're halfway of a decent parent, you probably start to feel a way about, being away, all hours of the night and your kid gets up throughout the night or what have you. So like, right. You kind of have to start testing and understanding where your limits are. But it's par for the course. We have 3 kids and we stay making those kinds of mistakes all the time, nothing dramatic or crazy, but but in our case, our kids actually tell us, right? So that's the benefit that we have is like, they feel like, if they feel like sometimes we binge watch shows, for example, like this is like a mild version of this kind of shit. And then we might be there for like 3 hours back to back to back in it. And then one of them will come over and be like, can I play with you? Whatever. And this is like not child appropriate shit. So we're like, all right, that's enough. We got to cut the shit. So it all really kind of, depends. I don't know. Okay. You go through some of that shit?
Yeah. But I also want to say just like the guilty feeling itself. Have
you guys had that though? That issue where you have like a serious guilt?
Yeah.
About
an
occasion, an event or something?
Yeah. I can't even recall like the exact thing, but there's been definite times where both my wife and I, either collectively or just on some separate stuff where it's like, oh man, I feel like I didn't, I wasn't the best parent I could have been, or I should have handled these things differently. And I think that if we don't feel that way, then there's an issue, right? Like the guilty feeling that you're feeling is a good thing, and that means that your mind is in the right place because you're looking inside yourself and saying, all right, wait a second, I wanna do better, and I want to be a good parent. So it's the scary folks are the ones that will do all kinds of dumb shit and don't have
Feel
any
the
kind
thing.
of yeah.
Don't acknowledge it for
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, a good example of something, and we talked about this a little bit before, is like this weekend I was smoking a couple cigars with my cousin's husband.
I thought you were about to say some blunts. I was like,
Nah, but that is the segue I'm gonna go to afterwards.
okay.
But we're smoking these cigars, and my kids, they're socialized to think that anything smoke related is bad for you, which is right. It's normal. That's correct. And they look at me with this like fear, fearful of me no longer being around when they see me doing this. And I got to explain to them, it's like, yeah, it's not good, but I'm not doing it every day. And this is a lot better if you have to compare it to like cigarettes, because the way they look at the world is from the chaos that cigarettes cause. And I feel a sense of guilt sometimes because they're looking at me with this like disapproval face, and it kind of goes against a lot of the things that I talk about outside of smoking, because they know me to be somebody who is really tries to be very health conscious and tries to give them the best advice possible. But then when they see me do that, it's conflicting, and it kind of causes me a pause to be like, fuck, I'm saying one thing, but then in this case I'm doing something opposed to what they're used to.
Right.
Yeah. And with younger kids it's harder because they don't really have any context to any of like looking at what you're doing and thinking whether it's bad or good or any of that. When they start getting a little older, and like if they're learning things at school or even the stuff that us as parents are teaching them, then they start making their own judgment calls and can either make you feel guilty or not about certain things.
But like as you mentioned earlier, like the weed, right? So there's a lot of parents, especially as you see around hip hop, that smoke. But I'm always wondering how that gets introduced to their kid, because in some cases you hear they have their kids kind of be a part of their, not necessarily sharing smoking with them, but
just being around it.
Expose them to the fact that their dad or their mom does it.
Yeah.
And that becomes, for me, conflicting as hell, because I don't even know how you do that. To me, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, that one's a head scratcher for me too, because it's like for me, I don't think there's a big difference between weed and alcohol, but I think just the way you consume it is there's kind of a big difference just from a kid perception. I mean, when I was a kid, I used to see like my mom and her friends, and they were growing weed, they're smoking, they're doing, and I can't remember specifically if I saw my mom smoking, but I know that like her boyfriends and the friend, my friends, their parents, I was always finding it everywhere, and yeah, so I don't
It
know.
becomes also for some people like a cultural thing. Like some people either pretend to feel like, oh, well, it's like I'm like a Rasta when they're not.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I've been around households where, a lot of my friends smoke, and I've been in households where they smoked in the house with the kids there, and they're only like, the only thing that they did to distance the kid is like, oh, you can't be right next to me,
Right.
while I'm smoking. You can just be like, like 2 arms length away, just not right next to me. And then I've been in some households where it's like they only smoke on the balcony, but the kids see it, they can smell it when you come in and out, so it's not hidden. But for the most part, a lot of my friends, they at least for themselves, to make themselves feel better, they view it as like it's a cultural thing. It's like it's a holy almost thing, which is they know it's not because they're not Rastas. People I'm talking about. If you were a Rasta, I'd say yeah, that's your case. But these people are not Rastas. But they just see it as a harmless thing, where they actually think that some of them that the drinking they might not want to be drunk in front of their kids. And then there's people that don't give a fuck, like,
Right.
Drunk, high, whatever. It's all good. So.
It's something that when we get Snoop on the show, we should probably delve into, just because he is like, the face of.
Well, I think he'd go more the roster route. I mean, he actually did at one point, So
Yeah.
I think he sees it more as a holier thing than not. But
I think I want to hear from him. Thanks, E.
True.
I think just from a health perspective, like I wouldn't even, like I wouldn't have anyone smoking cigarettes in the house, period.
No way,
I wouldn't have
dude.
anyone smoking anything in the house, period.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, again, it goes back to what I was saying about the way you consume alcohol is different than the way you, and also it's like, how do you act? And again, just like to E's point, some people don't give a shit. Like they'll be drunk, high around their kids, whatever. Yeah. But you also have to analyze, like, how do you act, when you're drinking? How do you act when you're smoking? Some people might think to themselves, well, I act exactly the same. But, if you're the other person looking at him, like, dude, you're fucked up when you're high.
Like, yeah. No, it's true, man. And for me, the thing is too, is that, especially if it's an infant or a toddler, like, they are in total need of everything from you. So for you to be inebriated or incapacitated in any kind of way, that puts them, at risk, and that's where the things like that would make you feel guilty if you maybe party a little too much around your kid.
Yeah, I think that actually the probably the scariest part to the whole partying aspect around your kids, or just like when they're in your care, is probably the sleeping part of it. Like, so if you fall asleep, if you crash out hard, like, how are you able to hear them if they need something during the night? Right. I think that's probably like the biggest, one of the biggest things for people to think about if they're, facing those kind of dilemmas, or like, how do you, like, if you have a couple drinks, or you're smoking, or you're doing whatever, like, how do you sleep? Do you end up passing out, or are you still able to hear things? So,
like the place that I've found myself at, even though before I ever had kids, I was like, I'm never gonna drink around my kids, or I'm gonna even possibly quit drinking or slow down. Like, obviously none of that has happened to a degree, but one of the things that I've come to find out, being that we're such a small family unit, is that I would love to be able to move around and be able to take my child almost anywhere and everywhere to a degree,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Not anywhere, not a fucking festival, but saying, like, if I'm going to go somewhere and we're going to, eat dinner with some people and maybe have a couple beers, that should be okay.
Right.
And it is okay, I think, to a degree. Mm-hmm. But it's just when, you might start taking it a little further and a little further and a little further. And that's where you need to start to reel back a little bit and be like, hey, I'm a parent first before I'm someone trying to go out and have fun.
Yeah. It's just, again, you got to be able to check yourself. You got to be able to know, like, figure out, like, what's the end game on what it is
or
you're
have
doing.
A plan. Like, if you're gonna go out with your with your significant other, you guys need to have a plan.
Yeah.
One person's in and one person's out.
Yeah.
Period.
Right.
But again, some of that is just learning on the job, right?
Right.
It's easy to think about that stuff before you have a kid and be like, oh yeah, I would never do X, Y, and Z. But then,
right. No, hey, you got to go through your trials and tribulations to be better.
As it relates to drinking, I think we might have talked about this a little bit in previous episodes, but like, do you give it a lot of thought as far as, you being a drink champ and how that will manifest itself in your daughter's mind at some point in the future? Even if,
absolutely.
How does that, I mean, I can imagine, but like, how's that conversation going to go when she's, I don't know, 12, when she's got a lot more understanding about a lot of things?
You mean the conversation of what I used to do, or that I'm still doing drink champs when she's 12? That to me isn't an idea that I would be possibly doing it, actively, like being a host and having to be the drinker on the show. Maybe I'm producing or executive producing something,
But just her knowing that's a part of your life. Like,
right.
There's got to come a point where you almost have to explain yourself, right? So that she can
Absolutely,
understand
yeah.
the context behind it all. Like,
Well,
do you play that over in your head? How
well,
you're going to
it's
do that?
probably a bigger conversation of just the whole thing of like, do you come clean to your kids like when they're old enough to understand this stuff? Like, if they ask you, "Hey, have you ever tried drugs? Have you ever done X, Y, and Z?" And it's like, do you come clean with them and talk to them about it, or
Right.
you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, because yeah, I mean, look, like part of me, feels like I'm gonna be pretty good to talk about this as an example because I'm a person that hasn't done hard drugs,
Mhm.
you know, um, with the exception of like smoking some weed and I might have tried some crazy glow,
You didn't.
uh,
You didn't inhale though, so it's all good.
right? But but yeah, I mean, I feel who's kind of actually taught me, or has been kind of someone I could look to as an example is actually Paul, who's frequent on our show, and Paul, he my goddaughter who's like 21, I think she's about to be 22, and my other goddaughters that are a little older as well, and he's got 5, 6 with the stepchild. I've seen him be pretty fucking open about his life and his experiences, and he's used it in a way. Would they either like he's used it where it's like I've been there, done that, which I think a lot of parents try to do,
Mhm.
and a lot of the things though his kids didn't follow in those footsteps, and they kind of when he talks about this stuff, Paul likes to like tell stories about the past and this and that. They kind of like say, you crazy, dad's crazy, oh, you guys were crazy, and I'm looking at that, I'm like, man, I hope that's the way it goes for me, because they know it's true, but they just like, you were wilding, dad, and they kind of take it more of a humorous side of it, like,
Approach.
yeah, approach to it, so it doesn't affect them, and they kind of like find it, they have fun with the stories, they think it's interesting, they think it's funny, they think it's crazy, and almost like it's a movie, and it's like, oh man, dad, you was wilding out back then, oh damn, you crazy, oh, you did that, oh, you wild. But they don't do that, they don't follow suit, and they don't, and they're not disappointed in their father. So
that's key that they're not disappointed in them. Yeah,
no, no,
yeah.
they're not. Because you know what? And I think this is what it all boils down to. He's still, held up to his obligations and responsibilities to his
Mm.
children. I think they know that. They see that he works, jobs, all these different jobs that he had to work. He gave up at some point in his passion of music to take those jobs and be responsible with his kids. They know that him and the mom, at least the first three, they had a rough breakup, so they've seen what the parents have gone through, and they kind of respect them for what their journey was, no matter how, in the end, as long as they realize we were okay.
Mhm.
And that must mean something, at least to someone with common sense and gratitude, like, I don't know, I hope that that's the way that my kid sees it, and any and any kid would see it.
Well, it's also in
So
terms of drink champs. It's not like you're as far as the drinking itself goes. It's pretty tame. It's not like you're passing out on
right.
camera
No,
and everything like that. So it's not like
I mean, you
a
could
big.
pick maybe one out of 150 episodes. Maybe it's a wild one. Yeah, we're actually getting hate mail. Like, you guys don't drink enough on the show anymore. I used to love it when Nori was drooling, man. What's going on? But but yeah, I mean, look. At the end of the day, I'm gonna just tell her what it was, and this is what it is, and hopefully what she really sees is that dad followed his passion. He worked hard. He was able to carve out a lane and a niche for himself, and through hard work and perseverance, he was able to create a career that was able to provide for her. And I was able to have fun while doing the things that I was doing outside of whatever work or what I would have done for fun. So that's the moral of the story, I hope.
Now here's the tricky part, and we have some time before we have to worry about that. But it's like, how do you get across to your kids by being able to tell some of these stories about what you did when you were younger without making it seem too cool, like, oh,
Glorifying.
dad did this, it's fine, he was okay, I can do it too, or making it seem like, I was the man, that kind of thing. It's like it's kind of a
Well, that's what
balancing.
Paul does.
Yeah.
You know,
But
he
but how does he do it, I wonder?
you know what? As you're saying that, I'm thinking it must be the individual kid's personality to how they absorb these stories.
Yeah.
maybe across the board, most kids just look at their parents as like, you'll never be cool. So any story you tell me, that's maybe when they're saying, "Are you crazy?" They're really saying, "You're such a dork." Like that's, that shit ain't cool no more. Acting like that ain't cool, but they just laugh it off and humor him. Maybe that's what they're thinking, and they want to go total opposite of whatever he's saying. That could be the case too. Now, I am noticing that like my goddaughters they're adults now. So now, well they're all pretty much the two are adults and the other one's a young adult. But they're drinking now. At least the oldest definitely is, and so I'm wondering, like, is there any like residual effects that eventually creep into their adulthood that they escaped when they were young, but maybe there's an effect down the line. I'm hoping not.
Mm. For me, the way I think I'm going to approach those things, and my past wasn't wild or anything like that, but even just talking about, drinking and smoking cigars, right? Like,
Right.
I'm always going to talk about the response. It's kind of like firearms to an extent, right? It's like you got to have respect for, in that case, a weapon, but in this case, whatever, drug, I guess you could call it, you're ingesting, alcohol being a legal one, so that you're doing it moderately and you know yourself well enough so that you're not once you get to a certain point, that shit can go haywire, so you back off that edge, right? And so for me, it's always like I explain the reason why I do something, and then I hit them with the worst case scenario that I've personally experienced or that I know somebody close to me has experienced. So it kind of gives them the balance in the conversation.
Right.
So far in mild areas that's worked, but it's never been that serious of a discussion around like, drugs or things related to drugs. So I'm hopeful that shit will work in my household.
Probably in the end, it's just trying to raise the best human beings possible so that they can navigate as adults, because they're all going to have their pitfalls. And I guess it's what we instill in them and how we raise them that gives them the tools to get up and dust their shoulders off and keep it moving without it really affecting them too badly.
And so to bring it back to your initial thing, don't beat yourself up, whatever it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'll try, man. It was pretty rough, man. Pretty rough.
just chalk it up to learning and keep it pushing.
Well, we got a guest today, so we can get some more insight. Let's bring him on in.
Yay.
Hello?
Mr. Green.
Oh.
All right, so we got world famous director Gil Green with us today. Gil.
Welcome.
Yeah, what up?
What up, fellas?
Miami representative.
Indeed.
Yep.
305 always.
All right.
So we got to give him a little bit more kudos. I mean, because this guy's got a crazy music video and beyond.
And don't let me throw in there, he used to be a rapper too.
Oh shit! I didn't know that.
I bring it up every time I'm around.
Yeah, usually it comes in about 15 minutes later, but it's cool. Straight from the jump.
So Gil, I mean, I guess to set things off, why don't you kick a few, maybe a quick 8 bars of childhood raps?
He's kidding though.
I'm kidding.
Wow. You have to dust into the archive, the Backlive archive.
Backlive's in the building.
Yeah, for sure. No, but that's cool, man. It's good to always know someone that knew me when we were selling chocolate bars on the street to try to raise $400 to get 30 minutes in a studio.
Good old days.
Yeah.
So Gil, what I guess we ask all our guests this is what's your current family dynamic?
Man, I am a father of 2 daughters, age 10, age 7. I'm about a month away from a newborn.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's making scheduling very tricky, but I'm very excited. I divorced and in a very good relationship now. I I'm divorced from my two daughters, baby mama, and just learning as I go and continuing to grow and learn from my experiences, mistakes, and try to keep growing. I think is the key word for me.
So in true fatherhood's fashion, we actually tried to get Gil on a couple of times, but each time conflicted with his putting his daughters to bed. So we finally made it work this time. Let's talk a little bit about the divorced dad scenario and kind of how that played out for you, and I guess the learning curve on in that end.
Yeah, man, divorce means you failed at something that you had really high hopes for. So, what I've learned in life is to embrace failures because they're opportunities to learn and grow. But you got to learn and grow from them, or else, you're just going to repeat yourself in the future. Probably been one of the most painful experiences. Just because when you love someone and you think that you're going to be with them to the end of time, and it doesn't work out, obviously it's not something you plan for, and so being thrown into like single dad for a hot minute was really challenging, especially with two girls. Having to learn how to comb hair, have those discussions with your daughter that you would probably expect a mom to have. Just be like, be all encompassing and everything, is always a challenge, but I thoroughly love it. I thoroughly enjoy it. I think it makes the bond that much better. And your perspective on life is really, really changes, man. That happens when you have kids, obviously, but, when you get thrown into, not thrown, but when you find yourself in a situation where you're a single dad, it becomes even more challenging at that point. So it's been real tough. It's been a challenge, but I love it. My kids are everything to me. They're number one, and I'm most of you guys. You're passionate. You're doing what you do because you're passionate about it. But as soon as you have kids, even that huge passion becomes second. In at least for me, it has, and that's what I take out of it.
So you mentioned single dad. Does that assume then that you have custody of your daughters?
50% custody.
Got it.
So yeah, I do like a split where 3 days of the week they're with me, or two days they're with me, 2 days they're with their mom, and then every other week we swap the 3-day weekend, the Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But that's if I could have them 100% of the time, I would. But
right.
Obviously, I'm glad that they have their mom in their life, and she's a great mom, and I think the more support you have for your kids, whether it's mom, auntie, uncle, grandma, it's true what they say about it takes a village to raise a child. And as much as the most difficult thing for me, divorce was going from having the luxury of seeing my children every day and knowing that when I come home from work or whenever I'm home from off the road, they will be in my house to that time being split into 50%. And that's most challenging, man. I have to say, every time I have to drop my daughters off, even though I know they're in great hands, it breaks my heart, just because it's time that, I look at it as like, once these kids get out the nest and head out to college, it's kind of like, you have that amount of time until then. And even probably less. As soon as they get like 14, 15, you probably become like the uncool dad.
Yeah.
And so I'm like soaking in every minute that I can get with them.
How I mean, I know the whole process is difficult. How did you approach, or how did you and your ex approach explaining to your kids what was going on and the new dynamic and living situations and all that? I can imagine that was probably hard to explain.
Oh yeah, probably worst day of my life was actually sitting my daughter down, or both of my daughters down. I did it individually, and telling them that I'm, not going to be in the house anymore, and watching their face kind of like, well, basically cry, but not even understand what am I talking about.
Right.
Their whole life is in that. It's challenging, man. It's just to conjure up those moments is like very difficult for me. But I've always taken this philosophy where I'm very open and honest, and that doesn't mean to the point where they need to know details on why our relationship didn't work, but just know that that they can talk to me about things, they can ask me questions, and I'm making them feel as comfortable as possible. But it was challenging. We involved a therapist just for extra support, so that there's a comfort zone of a professional that can also encourage that they express their feelings. But man, that's the most difficult day of my life, honestly, and because it's not like, even like, not to say that death is easy to deal with, but you can't control death. It happens when the time happens, and then you deal with it. But making a decisive decision that brings pain is really difficult, because you are at the control of it. You are making this decision to do something. So it's really tough to deal with. I ain't gonna front. But I think kids are resilient, and my key to both of my daughters has been to always talk about it, to always praise their mom in the highest regard, and never involve them in any quarrels or reasons on why having to pick a side, this or that, and just always take the high road, man. That's always been my thing, and my advice to anyone that's has to face that unfortunate position.
And how do they feel about the new addition to the family coming in? Are they psyched by it, or are they wondering, like, just kind of where do they fit in the whole scheme of things? How's that going?
No, they're excited. They have a great relationship with my girlfriend, and they're like looking forward to a little brother. Like, they can't, every time they come over, they're like, they want to rub the belly. They want to, I took them to see an ultrasound the other day, and they were so excited. So for me, it's been a really good transition into them understanding that what divorce is, and being able to fall in love with another significant other. And that doesn't mean that their mom is being replaced, or that their mom doesn't have the same, status as she will always have in their life. It just means that, that there's another support person that loves and cares for you, and everyone knows, and I've made it clear that my children are number one for me. So there's no jousting for positions or anything, and it'll be a challenge, because I remember when my youngest was born, the first week, my older daughter said, "Can we send Aaliyah back to the hospital?" Because instantly, like, all her attention was split in half at that point. I think that's just normal with siblings, and I'm sure there'll be some of that as the attention now has to get divided into thirds. But the thing is, like, to just encourage support, encourage love, and be conscious of everyone's feelings at all times. And it's not easy. Kids are not easy to raise, but it sure is a fun challenge.
So Gil, when we opened the show, we started talking about guilty parenting and some of the things that kind of trigger that in us. And then we moved into talking about, like, smoking, drinking, whatever, we kind of partake
Vices,
in. Yeah. And how we have those conversations with our kids around, for instance, alcohol, right? Consumption around them. have you had to have any of those conversations, assuming that you even drink alcohol or do something else, having to explain why you do things or hide from your kids? Like, it doesn't seem like you would hide. So, like, how do you approach that if that's ever come up?
Well, fortunately for me, and most people don't believe this when I tell them, I've never drunk alcohol in my life.
Wow.
Liar! No, I'm kidding.
Nah, man. I had a little Manischewitz wine at my wedding, but besides that,
it's true. He was on Drink Champs and didn't drink.
Yeah, I brought some strawberry quick on the Drink Champs. And that being said, is like, it's not a religious thing. I'm not Muslim. It's more just like. It's never been. I never had the inclination to drink or smoke weed, even though I hang around a lot of alcoholics and a lot of weed heads. And, I just never did it in my life. So, but my kids, they'll see people come over and they'll drink, and I don't discourage it. Like, I don't preach to anyone like don't drink. Like, and I just explain to them, they'll make their decisions when they're old enough to drink or like, if it gets to the conversation of smoking or whatever, I just educate. I'm trying to educate them on eating the proper foods. But as of now, as you know, kids can be picky and get hooked on sugar real quick, as most of us can. So, but, in regards to like some of like the vices that we deal with. I mean, I've had to have conversations where like my oldest one was asking about sex, and I think she asked what like a condom was, and it's like, I don't know if she found a condom or, I was talking to her about condoms and stuff. So I'm really open. Like, to me, I'm the parent that has the discussion about the birds and the bees, because I want my daughters to hear it from me before some kid on the playground tells them how it is, and they start getting other information. Just like, I had to talk with my daughter about periods, because she was just asking about it and she was curious. And I just felt like, if she's asking, then explain it, and it's natural. So, just communicate. And
you need to help Manny with that. Manny's
that's his biggest fear right now.
Yeah, he has this.
You're my idol right now, Gil. You're my idol.
Man, you know what I did? I looked at it as like, you can go to the park and you see a dog humping another dog, and so we have a dog, and it's a male dog, and I didn't believe in neutering him, so he's kind of horny all the time, and he'll jump and try to hump everything, and I just had to explain to him. I was like, yo, this is natural. This is how babies happen, and you see dogs do it. Well, humans do it too. And I approached it from it being just a natural thing. Like, and what I found is like, like kids like that, man. They just like to be told answers to their questions. And I think like, even like their mom was a little bit hesitant to have that conversation. And I kept putting it off so that they can have it with their mom. But in the course of being divorced, it wasn't happening. So my daughter just kept asking me about sex and what it is, and how babies really come, and how do they come. And I just used clinical words, man. I was like, a man has a penis, a woman has a vagina, boy dogs have penises, girl dogs have vaginas, and this is what happens. You put it in, there's a sperm. I did it from a very scientific.
Damn, dog. He had the whole sex ed conversation.
Oh, I gotta go, y'all.
He had the mannequin. He had the graphics.
But Gil, this is a conversation you were having with your 12-year-old. Is that correct?
It was like, she was in first grade at the time, so she was 7.
Wow.
Oh, shit.
But she was asking about it, because somebody must have said something in school.
Right.
Or she might have heard something. My biggest fear, honest, is the internet.
Right.
And that's my biggest fear, because like when I do treatments for like writing music videos and I need to pull up pictures to put in the treatments, man, I'll just Google search like fly girl, and all of a sudden you're getting all kinds of porno pics popping up, and I'm just like,
That's facts.
Yo, if it's this easy, like that's a conversation I don't want to have right now. It's like, why is it going in the butt or something like that? Like that, like, but that's what comes up now.
Try to
so
make
I
that
have
clinical.
All these locks. Yeah, nah, and so I have all these locks on the internet. Like they have all these parent things that you could get. I don't let them search YouTube. I don't let them search Google. I took that off their like little iPhones or iPads.
What about music?
That's my scary thing.
Are you filtering the music, or how's that go?
Yeah, for the most part, but they do hear songs, and now I tell them what I do is when the curse word comes, they recognize it, is to just do like censor it as you're rapping it yourself. So they do a good job. Like I don't know, man. Y'all like I'm hip hop 100, but I think I'm like stuck in Public Enemy, Brand Nubian hip hop, man. It's like I don't say the N word in my house. I know some people think it's cool or some people think it's a term of endearment. In my particular house, my father raised me that word is disrespectful. And so even though like it's in 90% of hip hop songs and even songs that I'm rapping to and want to say it because it goes with the flow, I'll censor myself from saying it. So like I'm just trying to teach them to be conscious of it. Like I'm not going to be able to prevent them from hearing bad words. Just recognize that if someone's using a bad word, it's because they're not eloquent enough to explain themselves with words that exist. And so basically I'm just trying to say like, you don't have to say it. You can recognize that it's there. You can censor it, and you can even enjoy the song. But man, I'm just trying, man. They'll probably have a potty mouth by the time they're in 8th grade. But
and how are you able to juggle just your work-life balance? I know that's something that we've always talking about here, especially if you don't have a typical 9-to-5 type gig, and it's like when there's work to get done, you oftentimes you got to go do it. So how does that work for you?
Man, that's the most difficult thing. Case in point, like I'm up for this really, really great job in LA, and it's like a commercial job with a big artist, and commercials where I'm really trying to make a push lately in my career. But like, I mean, this is a little different, but it's coming around the same time that the baby's supposed to be born. And so I might have to actually, pass on a job that like is one of those gem jobs that you never want to pass on. But it's about priorities, and what I said earlier is about once you have children, all of a sudden like these things that you dream about, that you work hard your whole life, they really do become trivial. When you have like a little soul that looks up to you as the best thing in the world. So for me, like birthday parties, obviously births, but even like vacays, I've actually passed on jobs. I probably would be a lot further in some of my goals and careers, where I would like to be, like as far as transitioning into feature films and stuff like that. If I didn't have that responsibility, but it is my responsibility, and so that becomes first priority, man. So that's the most difficult thing, the most challenging thing. I've had to like sacrifice time that, I still got to pay the bills, so I can't pass on all jobs. So sometimes I'll do a job and I'll lose time with them, but I'll make sure I FaceTime them, and if they're not with me, I'm FaceTiming them usually every night. But it pays off, man, because we're so connected. Me and my girls are really connected.
Damn. I'm just as you're speaking, Gil, I'm thinking about like when I travel, and then how I have those same emotions, right? And then the connectivity through something like a FaceTime, it doesn't solve for the lack of, you know, the personal touch, having them in the physical space. But man, does it really like help? Because otherwise, you're, you know, speaking on the phone is leaps and bounds different than FaceTime, and that feels a lot more closer.
And one of the other things, Gil, that we've talked about in the past, and you know, I'm the newest father here on the fatherhoods. I have an 11-month-old, and
Wow, you're not.
when you're a creative and you're your own, you know, businessman, you're independent. How do you keep that mojo? How do you keep up that creativity when now you're like in this whirlwind of being a parent, especially as a first time parent? But now that you're about to be 3 times over, how were you able to keep that creative, you know, bugging you to create? Because I see it like difficult right now, at least in this 11-month period that I'm in.
And you're feeling guilty, right?
And guilty, exactly. When you're trying to be creative and you're trying to carve out that space to be more creative.
Yeah, man, I feel for you. I mean, I get it, and it's frustrating. I think the secret or a tactic that I've been able to do is to try to involve them in my work. So, for instance, like for Parents' Day, they had like go to work with your Parents' Day, and I was doing a Nicki Minaj video, and so. I had to write the treatment for the Nicki. It was Jason Derulo featuring Nicki Minaj, and the topic, the song is called "Swallow." You know, not the most.
Nice.
So I knew what I knew. I knew what I wanted the concept to be, which was going to be this metaphor on swallowing candy, right, and making it all sexy with candy, and so I had the kids come to my job, and I told them, I was like, I have to write a concept for a treatment, and I need ideas. I need your help, and we want to think about all candy. Like, I need to do a video about candy because the song is about a girl that likes candy so much she wants to eat it all the time.
Yo, I can't wait. I can't wait till we fast
Did you use
forward
clinical
5
words?
years. Did you use technical words?
Yo, it was crazy, man. So the kids were hyped. They were really hyped. They brainstormed. They wrote all the favorite candies down, lollipops, this, and I incorporated it into the actual treatment. Sometimes I would put ideas in their head so that then they would think it's their idea, but I was still involving them in the whole idea of like what it is like to be a director and come up with ideas. And so,
Right.
So they got to understand what writing a treatment was on a very sexually explicit song. And then I actually had them on that weekend we were shooting, and I brought them to the Tech Scout so they could see the set and see it being built. And then they just went crazy because they saw this huge room filled with every kind of candy. And so for them, it was like, oh, we conceptualized it. Now we're seeing it on a set. And I mean, there was like every kind of lollipop and now and later you can imagine. And so I still haven't let them see the final video because I think it's too explicit.
Right.
But you know, I involved them in the process. You know, and so I think what it is time management is the most challenging. You know, getting back to your original question, the frustration of staying creative but having to be a parent and having to make dinner, and also, you know, do creative work, and being exhausted and tired. And so it's really about a balance of time. You know, creativity for me comes when I'm listening to music, and I do that with the kids all the time. You know, every time I get a new song in, they're listening to it. I ask them what their ideas would be. So I guess what I'm trying to do is basically merge a little bit of of allowing them to see what my work is like, and you know, it's challenging, man. It's frustrating. I completely agree with you how it can mess your mojo up. But I think you go in waves, and I think creative people go in waves, and so you might have writer's block. You have writer's block 1 month, and then boom, you're gonna, you know, all of a sudden you're gonna have a spark of creativity. But I don't know. I'm about to have a newborn, and I don't think I'm gonna be sleeping at all. So,
Yo,
ask me this question.
Yeah, come back and check in with us.
Yeah.
You see,
See a different answer.
we created fatherhoods as to help relieve some of that stress and help free up some of that creative mojo and
Talk
keep
it.
You
keep.
tell me how you balance it, man. I'd like to know some of your guys.
I mean, the other guys. I'm still mine's a baby, so I'm still trying to figure it out. But these guys could probably help more.
I mean, but you're in the midst of it right now, so you are able to figure it out. Or you just kind of, it's just, do you feel like there's any kind of
Me personally,
method to the madness of what you're doing right now?
I just not. I'm always feeling like I'm behind where I could be creatively and efficiently and everything encompassing the world of what I'm working on in business and art. So and I don't feel too guilty about it because at the end of the day it's kind of like everything Gil said. When you have a child, that becomes first priority. So I don't feel guilty, but at the end, but the flip of it is, I feel like a person who has like a regular 9 to 5, they can just, hey, I'm gonna go to work, and I'm gonna clock out, and that's when I see my kid, and it just becomes like a normal thing. But when it's all on you, and especially if you're in this industry that's I call it just the world of art. Let's say no matter what you're doing in the arts just like how creativity comes in waves, so does funding and the arts come in waves.
Yeah.
So when you could be good in one moment, while you're doing this stuff, and then the next moment something changes and you're back on the low and you got to figure it out again. So that's just the difference now.
Yeah,
Now I have a
how about
responsibility.
not even having the liberty to like be able to flex out, like when you obviously we go to a lot of events at night,
Right.
Like, I mean, I probably never see any of y'all. I don't think I've been. Cats come down to Miami and they hit me up thinking I know what's popping in Miami, and I have no idea, man.
Oh no, yeah, for sure.
Is still going on, or what the haps is, and that's probably the biggest challenge. Because honestly, man, right now for where I want to be in my career, I'd probably be living in either New York or LA.
Right.
But I'm committed to being a father to my 2 daughters, and I can't just get up and switch cities for the next 18 years or 15 years or so. So I'm going to have to figure it out this way. And that's the most challenging thing. Because I know especially for us, like if you're in those hubs, things pop off quick. So when I take a trip to New York, man, honestly, man, I probably have like 20 meetings in one day, which would normally take, 4 or 5 days just because I'm trying to get it in while I'm there. But that's the most challenging thing is not having the freedom. And that, like you said, most 9-to-5ers have a job, they come home, and then they have a routine. They take the garbage, they read the book to the kids. Like it's routine. And then we've chosen this life that's very like non-routine, and we get an invite. Like I feel bad because I haven't been able to come see your movie, man. I wanted to come to the Miami Film Festival and check out that flick and support. And if I'm never there, it's usually because I'm with my kids and I can't do it. I can't get out.
Yeah, no, I mean that's exactly what it is. What were you gonna say, Kay?
No, I was just gonna say, I think for me, like I started learning how to almost create these short-term routines. Like I started the whole newborn scenario that threw me off for about a year, and then after a while, I just kind of I guess that old saying, "This too shall pass." Like just started like embracing. Knowing that a lot of the scheduling and the routines, everything is pretty much temporary. So it was just trying to figure out like whatever the phase was that we were going through with the age of my son. How do I create some kind of routine that works for that moment or for that kind of short term, knowing that his schedule and the way he operates is going to change any minute, so it's almost like you have to be adaptable but still try to figure out like all right, if he's sleeping earlier now, then that means that I'm going to have my nights to really kind of dive in and do things. So I'm going to create I'm going to form this new routine based on these new kind of schedules and challenges that are going on?
For me, unlike you, bozos, and Gil soon will be in these same waters. You got
Again.
Yeah, I got 3 kids, right? And they're all live in the same household. So for me, I've learned to forgive myself for not completing something
Aren't you
that
just
I
nice?
was that that I was, super aggressively trying to pursue.
Right.
And that gets conflicting sometimes because I'm I'm a person that's big on meeting expectations that I set with, particularly with others, right? So if it's a job or what have you, I don't let that shit go by the wayside. But at the same time, there comes a point where you got a 3-year-old yanking at you from one side, 5-year-old on the other, and the 12-year-old needs X, Y, and Z to be taking X, Y, and Z. When they team up like that, I'm like, all right, this shit can wait. If I have to excuse myself from with someone, I do so. But then I just give them that attention because then I let a lot of regret and all this shit pile up, and that devastates me at the end of the day. And if I'm not good, I can't give them anything good. So I just learn to forgive yourself within reason, right? Because you can't just be fucking every time something happens, just drop shit and not tend to your responsibilities. But like Gil, man, that's number one.
And what's your support? I'm curious to know what's your support with you have wifey in the house, grandmother,
Yeah, so mine. So it's interesting. So I have my wife, and she is absolutely the backbone. I'd say Google Calendar, shared calendar, is like super clutch. And then now I moved back to New York, so now I've got my mom, who's like 45 minutes away. So, but previously I was in Cali and in Miami before that, and in California was the desert. We had nobody. So for me, that was our test. It was like, all right, we had 2 kids approaching our third, and that's when my wife and I's bond elevated. And so I've got maximum support.
Yeah, that's key. That's key.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'd say we're all 3 of us are lucky that we have, we're in households where it's, mom and dad. So that's
Right.
good. It gives everyone some
Breathing
teamwork. Yeah.
Yo, Gil, we're about to wrap up to let you get back to your family. What if anything do you want to share about what your projects are, where people can check for your stuff, like what's coming up? Like share away.
Yeah. I'm still doing my thing on the directing tip. One of the recent music videos I just worked with Camila Cabello and Alejandro Sanz, who's a huge Spanish singer.
Nice.
Did another one with Pitbull, who's like family down here, and Ludacris and Royce. And so staying busy with the videos, always loving to work with new artists. Also just doing commercials. I just got back from India. We're speaking of that was
I saw you posting.
Trip. Yeah, man. India is popping, especially on the hip hop tip, man. They have this.
Yeah, I want to go, man.
Film out called Gully Boy, which is actually executive produced by Nas, and it's their version of 8 Mile.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so I was fortunate enough to do a Budweiser commercial out there with some of the stars of that movie, and that took me away from my family for 2 weeks. But again, it was one of those jobs that pays the bills, and so it was a lot of FaceTime, and that was difficult for the FaceTime because the time zones are so different. They're night is day and day is night over there.
Yeah,
so
it's like a whole nother day.
Yeah, so I would be hitting them up early in the morning, but on the work tip, staying busy with commercials, and really what I'm aiming to do is push into feature films and TV. I have some stuff that I've been working on when I do get a second, and can be creative, that that is where I want to go. If you know a lot of the videos that I've done, a lot of them have to do with like Miami or culture or subcultures, like the hip hop culture, or even just like not your mainstream culture. So
Right.
in that vein, I want to take feature films, or nowadays TV programming is just as hot, and build out characters and bring my perspective as someone that grew up in this really cool city, Miami, in a time when hip hop before it was mainstream, and it was like you had cats like EFN doing his thing, and you had to search and find all the little pockets.
Yep.
And so that's what I bring out into the screen. My thing has always been writing and narrative more so than documentary stuff. So that I'm a little bit more into like character development and creating stories. So you get to do it on a music video. You get to do it for 3 minutes, but the ultimate goal is to do it for 90 minutes in a movie theater and capture people's attentions and take them on a ride into another world. So that's my focus right now.
Fatherhood.
That sounds
the
like
movie.
I was just about to say that sounds like Fatherhood's the movie. Word up.
Or the comedy. It could be the comedy.
Right.
Or the episodic series. Yo, Gil, man, it was a pleasure having you. Thank you for being so candid with us, man, and sharing those experiences. Those are gold for us.
And you're welcome anytime. So please come check back in with us.
Yeah, if you need some any sounding board for you when you're in newborn style.
Right.
Nah, fellas, I appreciate that you invite me to share my thoughts, my life, insights. I'm learning as I'm going, and I appreciate both of your friendships throughout the career. Throughout like our careers simultaneously, and man, you guys are family. So anytime, you just let me know. I'm here.
Thank you, brother.
Thanks,
Appreciate
man.
it, man.
Yep.
All right, y'all.
Take it easy, brother.
Later.